www.freedomslips.com.
Welcome, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. This evening, I have two guests, people that have been on my show in the past. Two of my favorite guests, James McCanney and Warren Trammell. Warren, how you doing?
Very good, sir. Very good.
Oh, you're sounding great, man.
Great.
And James McCanney's here as well. James McCanney, professor. Well, he just has so many. I could talk here for 5 minutes about all of his abilities and all his areas of expertise. But James, how you doing?
Very good, very good. Very nice night here, and got my feet up and just relaxing. So, looking forward to a couple hours of delving into wherever we want to go. We were talking earlier. We're gonna be like range chickens tonight. We're gonna just wander around the forest and of knowledge and pick out, prime fruit and bugs and and chomp on them for a while.
Yeah, free range discussion tonight, folks. James, can you get a little closer to your mic? You sound a little distant.
Really?
Yeah.
How's that? Is that any better?
Not much.
Oh, let me move here. Let me just okay. Gonna try a couple things here. Is that any better?
I think so. Yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's try this. Yeah. So. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, that was great. For a second, you were really close. Okay, that's good. No, it's just
realize
equalizing the volume, getting us all the same volume. So not someone isn't lower than the others. So we're good now. I think that's about right. So I was chatting with you just before we got on here, folks, about this. I got this story on Facebook about sperm whales in northern Germany on the coast, the Arctic coast there, and how depressing this story was for me. My friend said horrifying. Here's a whale that can dive up to 6,000 feet down for food, and it's coming up starving, full of garbage, fish nets. God, I mean, a part of a car engine. I mean, I couldn't believe it, what they found in the autopsy. Yeah.
Oh, Brian?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with my system here, but I cannot unmute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, buddy.
What is going on here? Okay.
You may have Skyped up twice and you don't know it. But you're coming through good?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
That's what was going on. You had called me. I had two going on. That's what was going on.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, now we're good.
Yeah, you probably got two different systems running, and I always shut everything else off when I do a show. That makes it easier. So you were saying, James, about the some other whale die-off you read. This is 13 whales. I mean, it's well known that the Pacific's dying because of Fukushima and rampant shipping and all sorts of factors. But I think Fukushima is probably the most devastating factor. Other things certainly are not helping.
Oh yeah.
To me, it's very sad to hear about the North Atlantic dying because I mean that should be an area that's pretty pristine at this point. There's not too much happening up there, I would think, other than military activity and maybe a small amount of garbage getting into the water, fishing and whatnot. But what were you saying earlier about Hawaii, James?
Yeah, I was getting reports from divers in Hawaii, actual divers, who are reporting that sea life, but whales. Now, typically this time of year would be whale watching time in Hawaiian Islands. People go there and they get up on a prominent peak or a location where you can see the ocean, or even from the beach, and you just look out and you see the whales breaching, and the spouts going off, etc. Now they have a dead whale watch where because these whales are the Hawaiian coast. A lot of it is remote. Hawaii is has a lot of coastline, and a lot of it is not accessible. So when a whale washes up, it's not like you can see it from the road or anything like that. So they have people going out, and it's a dead whale watch, which they're trying to find and locate the dead whales. And of course, nobody wants to attribute it to Fukushima. I mean, this is unprecedented. Maybe a whale once every 5 years would die and wash up or something, but now it's very common, and nobody wants to attribute it to Fukushima. Nobody wants to say the nuclear waste or disaster. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable that science has been so corrupted, and that's one of your areas of expertise, as you are a tier one science. Tier one means the top of the scale, folks. And it's just, especially nuke science. I say the two most corrupted sciences are nuke science and climate science. Do you agree with me, James?
Well, it's hard to put one above the other in terms of corruption. But yeah, nuclear science really has the world by the by the tail, so to speak. Oh man, it's just the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the United Nations has a Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Atomic Energy Commission. It's just the corruption there is just so vast. The lies are so vast. Trying to force more beyond absurd. A lot of the problem we've had with Iran, and many countries, in fact, third world countries that have the ability to produce nuclear energy, is that, well, first of all, we educated all those people. Those people came to our universities and learned. Where do you think they learned all of this? In our own universities. So there were universities where our own students could not go to school because we had so many foreign students. But any
Yeah. Are you there, Warren?
Yes.
You are?
Yes.
James, are you back? I think we're on. I think we're live again. I'm not sure what happened there, folks. Sorry. I'll get James back here. We just got cut off for absolutely no reason. You're good there, Warren?
I really hate it when the NSA messes with the conversation.
Yeah, I do.
yeah. Hello,
we just had a
I'm
complete
back.
outage across the scale here. For some reason, everything just died on me. Sorry about that. It's not much I can do when we get interfered with. So we were talking. What you're doing is talking
about Iran.
Yeah.
And the fact that the so-called terrorism of Iran, the real issue has always been that if Iran develops nuclear power, peaceful nuclear power, and plants that generate electricity, they're going to be a generation ahead of what General Electric and the boys are making here in the United States. And they can sell it. Iran would certainly sell it for much less. They wouldn't have a monopoly. They would just be selling a product, but they would undercut the international monopoly. And also, there's a limited amount of nuclear fuel, so they would be cutting into the nuclear fuel supply. And they actually operate a bit differently than the ones traditionally used in the West. But they could undercut and sell nuclear power plants around the world, and that's what the whole issue was about. It's the main issue, and anybody on the inside knows this. Israel claims that, Iran would bomb them. Israel has tons of nuclear weapons that have come from the United States. And, for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, imagining that it's somehow a threat to Israel is just absolutely beyond absurd.
Oh yeah, they have hundreds of nukes, at least, in Israel. Reported hundreds. Yeah, on their soil.
And so that imagine that by Arab country would develop a nuke and create a threat to Israel. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. But it's more like the pot calling the kettle really, really, really black, if you know what I mean.
Well, hypocrisy reigns supreme in Western foreign policy in all respects. I mean, it's just the nuclear industry is just one of the many areas of hypocrisy. But it amazes me that we can find people who call themselves scientists who support the use of nuclear power, because we don't have any way of dealing with the waste. We've had enough accidents now to show that we really can't handle an accident if it's severe. I mean, they're putting these things in tidal wave zones, earthquake zones. I mean, James, how did it get this out of control?
Well, there again, you go back to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the oversight committees, Congress, and you go all the way back to the very beginning, where the thorium reactors were well known. They don't have any of the shutdown problems. They don't have the radiation problems. But the West wanted to develop nuclear weapons. And that was a byproduct that was one of the steps in developing the plutonium for the bomb program. Now we're literally burning plutonium, which was decommissioned bomb material, nuclear fuel. We're using it in the nuclear reactors for energy. And when it gets done being used, and it's never really spent, it just gets to be less efficient. They take it out and they store it, but they have to cool it, because if you don't cool it, it's going to basically melt down anything that is in any cask and pollute. So, I mean, it's a terminal industry with a point of no return. It's absolutely absurd. But how it got this way, through people just ignoring the facts, and then scientists who would say anything to get their paycheck. That's all it amounts to.
Yeah, I have you did an amazing show with Dana Durnford a couple months ago, and we talked mainly about Fukushima, the devastating effects. He's predicting that the Pacific Ocean will be pretty much dead in a year. That there have been literally hundreds and hundreds of whales, 330 whales alone in Chile, that showed up completely emaciated, no food for them. And if they're not living, then not much else is, folks. Top of the food chain. So that's I have a podcast, folks. I'm Nature, YouTube. You might want to check that show out. Dana has also a show every week, maybe a few times a week on live stream. He's continuing to talk about it. Now, you came up with some solutions to Fukushima, which you're one of the few people on the planet who actually has some solutions to stopping the continual leak. Dana's saying that it's the equivalent of 1,000 Hiroshimas a day of nuclear radiation coming out of that huge accident site. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but even if it's a few, I mean, this is devastating for the ocean.
Yeah, and it is probably. There were 600,000, if you can even imagine such a number, spent fuel rods on the roofs of the Daiichi plant. 600,000 spent fuel rods. And so, I mean, that required cooling, and now they're not being cooled. And Japan is not doing anything about it. They are going to wait another year before they decide what to do. It's such a ludicrous situation. A report just came out now that over 100 of the United States nuclear power plants are leaking. The one in Biscayne Bay right now, the Turkey Point plant from the Florida Light and Electric, the plant is leaking to the point where thorium, or no, what was the, I'm trying to think of what the trace element was that they measure. Anyway, it's such a level, it's like 200
Tritium,
times.
usually it's tritium or cesium.
Tritium, yeah, it's tritium, that's what it was. Is 200 times normal level. So if you want to, you know, it's, you know, what's going on here, and that pollution doesn't go away. That just seeps out. I mean, that is extremely dangerous stuff. And, you know, they know for a fact that that system is leaking, but they're not doing anything about it. The commissions that they give for these nuclear power plants, many of them are past their expected life, and they just keep recommissioning them. And there again, it's just all based on money, and nobody wants to imagine shutting these down because it means money. The San Onofre plant in San Diego had an accident. Nobody talks about what it really was, but they had to shut that down, and that was a relatively new plant. $5 billion to decommission just that one plant. So imagine $5 billion, and that's probably that's a conservative figure. It's really about $10 billion to decommission a nuclear power plant. So multiply $10 billion times 100, okay? And that means it would cost $1 trillion real dollars. This is not, you know, loaned money or something like that. It would cost literally $1 trillion to decommission the United States nuclear power plant fleet.
But that's just the plant. That's not all the waste, James. They still don't have a technology for storing the waste properly that does not. I think that the containers now are good for like maybe what, 2 generations, 40 years, 50 years max.
Oh, maybe, but that depends on them being cooled constantly.
Yeah.
Remember in where was it? Missouri, I believe it was, where there's a river that flooded.
They had the $1.3 billion top of the line storage facility that went red. They had americium and plutonium coming out of the vents because of a fire.
Oh, well, yeah. What I'm talking about was the flood. It was the 2008 spring flood.
Oh, no. This was, more recent. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
And that was, it's late, so my brain isn't, I've forgotten the name of the river that comes out of South Dakota down into, through Nebraska and off to the Mississippi. I'll think of it in a minute. But when that river was flooding, there was a plant. It was maybe it was in Kansas, but anyway, they had to shut the plant down, and so they had no way to cool the nuclear fuel that was sitting around the plant. And that was the big fear, is that in a flood situation, those casks, one of them would break open, and basically pollute the entire lower Mississippi River, which goes all the way down to New Orleans. And so you have 10 million people living on that river that would be basically displaced, in all the animal life and everything that goes with it. I mean, the scale of what these nuclear power plants can pollute is just incredible. So yeah, what's going on is absolutely beyond criminal, and it comes right back to the scientists.
And by the way, people, James has a master's degree in nuclear solid state physics, so he knows of what he speaks, as well as he has incredible knowledge of all areas, almost every area of science. Okay. So this is a top expert we're talking to here.
Yeah, I've worked around scientists, and especially people who are, like you say, in universities, and they're getting grants and they're getting money. my read on it is pretty much in general, these are people without any conscience at all, without any conscious ability to discern what's right and wrong or good or bad. And they won't talk about it. Nobody will break the seal, so to speak, and cross the line.
I bet you they pay these guys very well too. Anybody who's a nuclear scientist. I mean, to be fair, in a way, it is a very complex science. There's a lot of elements involved. These reactors, the engineering is incredibly sophisticated. It's one of the reasons they were used, because they cost a hell of a lot of money. They need a lot of regulation, So they're very popular with governments and business. But in the end, they're just I call it Satan's metal. I mean, plutonium, all the byproducts of nuclear power plants are just they're beyond our control.
Yeah, and then to create them, let's look at the mining of, say, uranium. In the ground, it's pretty much irrelevant. I mean, we have cows grazing in the areas, like take, for example, up in Oregon. There's a uranium-rich region in southeastern Oregon. But as it sits in the ground, it's really non-toxic. It's not a big deal. But what they do is they take it out and they mine the ground and then concentrate it, and concentrate it further and then further until they actually make it into the fuel that's going to be used. But so they're taking something out of the ground that's relatively harmless and making it into a concentrated form. And it would be the same as if you concentrated many things. Let's imagine all kinds of products that come out of oil. Oil as such in the ground is relatively harmless because it stays there. It's just sitting there. It really doesn't hurt anything. But you take it out of the ground, you process it, you make all kinds of really harsh chemicals. You bring out a lot of the solvents and the low number, hydrocarbon chains, and it's extremely dangerous stuff. Used in industry, things like that. We were just talking about the Flint River, where it catches on fire and burns, literally burns, because of the chemical pollution in the river. But with nuclear is a pollution that it kills. Nuclear pollution kills.
You can't burn nuclear waste.
Yeah, it's not, once you concentrate it, excuse me, it's not going to go away. It is, these people are just, it's head in the sand treatment of the issue, because it's not going to go away. It's going to be there. We were talking about sending this stuff into space, and literally that's the only solution, just to get it completely off Earth. The military, we don't even know all the places they've dumped nuclear fuel from. They have many right now, many nuclear ships, including the biggest, the aircraft carriers and things like that. I mean, and when they get done with the fuel, they take it out in a big cavern down in the ocean and dump it. Just unbelievable. You're thinking that, out of sight, out of mind. No, the nuclear problem is probably the most horrific problem facing mankind today. And Fukushima is just a sample. That one power plant could kill the entire Pacific Ocean. Now it's killing, it's wrapping around into the other oceans. Nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to clean it up. They're ignoring it. The Japanese government is forcing people to go back in that area. Japan was paying the residents near Fukushima, the Daiichi plant there, they were paying them money to stay away, but now they don't want to pay them anymore, so they're just telling them, well, you either go back there or whatever, we're not going to pay you anymore. So these people are stuck, and the people don't want to go back there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to them, people are their lives are irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's it's one of the reasons we got to get rid of these huge hierarchies, because when you're at the top, you preserve everything as best you can, but anyone below you, it's like, well, you're not as high up on the echelon as I am, so your life is irrelevant. And
Well, back in the Roman days, even as bad as the Roman army was as they marched outwards, there came a point where they couldn't march anymore. I mean, they just uh, they lost momentum because they got so big. But as Rome continued to collapse, they never saw it happening. But that's what's going on today, and we're just, as a society, collapsing in all directions. And the only solution is going to be for people to uh, start living. This is the point, though. That back in the Roman days, if you got out of out of sight, out of mind, so to speak, then you were okay. But today, with nuclear pollution, you can't find a place to get away from it.
yeah, I mean, what do you say about the aerosolization of things, heavy metals like plutonium and americium? How does that work, James?
Well, radioactivity tends to attach to dust particles or dirt or things like that, and so it settles to the ground and it pollutes the area. So it's localized. Like in Iraq, there's a tremendous amount of spent uranium uh, fuel that was used on the tips of armor-piercing tips of shells there. But literally, the people in Iraq cannot have kids. The majority of people in Iraq, there were so many deformed kids that came out of that they literally stopped having kids.
Well, Fallujah,
And
I know in Fallujah that the 80% rate of gross deformation of the children, and the doctors recommended no kids. I'm not sure if that's across Iraq, but I wouldn't be surprised because they've dumped so much depleted uranium there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and but that's localized. It's not going to go anyplace. Even if there's a dust storm, it's not going to go anyplace. It's pretty much localized. But
I don't know,
that
James. I've heard of them finding DU in water samples in North America now. I don't know
well,
where
yeah,
that's coming
then
from.
I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah, so I guess I misspoke a bit. That is simply localized.
Yeah, see, when those shells explode, they become like a powder, a fine
Yeah.
dust, and that stuff can go anywhere on the planet, I would think. And there's, it gets up in the atmosphere. Again, this is one of the misnomers and one of the falsehoods about radiation coming from Fukushima. People say, well, it's going to go in the ocean and it's going to sink or whatever. But no, I mean, these particles, folks, go worldwide.
Well, in the way the food chain works is the plankton they filter the water. That's what they do. That's where they get their nutrients. So they really cleanse the ocean. But now that there's nuclear waste, that's being absorbed. It's not going to be cleansed out of their system, so it stays there and it kills them off, and it goes right up the food chain. So, now whales are probably starving to death, whereas earlier they were literally dying from cancer and from radiation pollution. Now there's nothing for them to eat. There's no plankton. There's no shrimp that eat the plankton, etc. So literally now they're just starving to death. And like you say, they're looking for anything to eat.
Yeah, I mean, a sperm whale knows that you shouldn't eat an engine part. I mean, I don't think it's that dumb. It's just desperate. It's like, if you're really thirsty and you find a puddle full of toxic water, you might be so, lost and unable to think clearly that you might start drinking it, in hopes that it would save you. I mean, they're desperate, so they eat
I,
stuff like fish nets and
yeah,
spare probably a tire, anything. They see anything and they think, well, I'm desperate. I'm going to eat this because I'm
I,
starving.
I've been in parts of the world, and somewhat recently, in fact, where the water is so bad. This is an example. I was on a public transportation. I was going off to the coastline, going through an extremely impoverished area. And I saw people going down the road in one way with empty containers and coming back the other way with full containers. And these were all odds and ends types of containers, plastic containers, whatever they had. One guy had a bicycle he had built, and he had 4 or 5 gallon buckets in it. So he had like that was a very advanced system. And so, of course, he had the water there, and he's going back to town, which was about 10 miles away, by the way. And I thought, oh boy, I want to see where they're getting the water from there. We're going on the road, and there I see the crowd of people out in the field on basically a mud puddle, maybe 50 feet across. And the people are standing out in that, filling their water jugs. And it's in the middle of a cow pasture where you have cow poop and runoff, whatever, going into that. And that's where the people were getting their water from. I was like, it almost made, it just made me sick to my stomach. And, a lot of them are too poor to afford propane to heat it up to, kill the germs, etc. Oh, it's horrific. But that could be easily cured with government programs, but they don't do anything. But like you say, the people in a desperate situation will do anything. And, if that's their water source, that's their water source. I get so angry at Americans. They're so worried about their, what's going on. The third world out there is really, really in bad condition. And, things don't have to be that way. There's plenty of resources. There's plenty of fresh water. It's just that it's totally mismanaged. And the United States is heading in that direction. But nuclear waste is the killer. I mean, that's the thing that's going to destroy the world, kill off everything, and leave it barren. And nothing is ever going to grow here again.
Yeah, I mean, it's so devastating. I guess people have a hard time believing it, or I think they sort of go into sort of a dull kind of denial point of view. They don't want to accept the fact. I guess having a more lucid and clear media would help. Most of the nuclear experts out there are paid liars, right? They go on mainstream TV and whatnot.
Well, yeah, but I've been around these people, and they're without conscience. They can't see reality. How can you be trained in nuclear physics, understand the dangers, which is part of your training, and deny that there's a problem? I mean, 1 and 1 is 2, buddy.
Did you actually discuss the toxicity of all these different radionuclides when you were learning this stuff, or wasn't it more based upon physics, chemistry, and engineering? Did they actually discuss toxicity?
Oh, sure, absolutely, yeah. And the history of radiation is, as it was discovered, a lot of the people, the Curies, a lot of these people died from radiation. That's how they discovered what was going on. I just read an example today of a guy who worked for Edison that was working with X-rays. And his arms became so badly cancerous that they cut him off, and he eventually died about a year later. And they credit him with being the first guy to die of radiation poisoning. But and that's X-ray radiation. That's a little bit different. That's Roentgen, where you take electrons, slam it into a metal plate, and it creates X-rays. It's kind of like what goes on in the dentist or doctor's office. But radiation takes many forms.
Oh yes. I mean, many, and it's not just nuclear radiation. We've got all sorts of cell phone towers everywhere now, and that's another issue. But let's stick with this, the nuclear stuff. There's so many toxins coming at us: energy systems, chemical toxins.
But to answer your question, yeah, the people that receive training are fully aware of the dangers. And I mean, we handle this stuff in the laboratory. I mean, there's ways to handle it, and providing shielding, and there's ways to manage, working with nuclear materials so that you're safe, so it's not a danger. But the idea that there are safe levels. This is one of the things that comes from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or the EPA or whatever, that somehow there are safe levels. No, because if you pollute within the safe levels, that's cumulative in a next year. Say you pollute up to the safe level, because it's cumulative. Next year, even though you're still polluting within the safe levels, the amount that's being absorbed into the environment is twice, and then the next year is 3 times, and the next year 4 times. This is cumulative. And so, they don't recognize that. It's just, if you're a scientist, how can you deny that nuclear fuel is a problem? I mean, how can you even imagine that? It's absurd, a nuclear fuel. But I've been, like I say, around these people, and it's like, no, nuclear is good. I don't know. How can you be that stupid? How can you possibly not recognize the danger of large-scale use of nuclear power? I mean, it's just beyond absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's hard to believe, but I guess a lot of what was discussed in the Bible, the effect of evil, dark forces here is maybe a possible explanation for these people having no conscience and being completely devoid of any ethical reasoning. Ethical reasoning is not the same as scientific reasoning, folks. I believe it comes from a different source, and that source is closer to God than scientific reasoning.
But if you took purely scientific reasoning, you wouldn't use nuclear fuel. It's terribly inefficient. The process of gathering the fuel and processing it and getting it to a usable state is extremely expensive. There's many other ways to get fuel, and the idea that say people live up in a frigid climate and require all of this energy just to survive on a daily basis, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If you have infinite amount of energy and it doesn't cost anything and it doesn't pollute and it doesn't create any heat pollution, that's one thing, but that's not the case.
Do you want to talk about your wing wheel, James?
Well, and
As an
that's the
alternative?
solution. Yeah, there are alternatives, and that's why I did that. That's why I developed the wing generator project, was to cure the world energy situation. So the wing generators can be made on a very large scale, and unfortunately, it's like every time this thing gets up and close to production, it's typically problems with people or money, that type of thing. And so I'm just doing it simply myself, and I'll progress at my own rate and do it as efficiently as possible. But that's another problem with progress of humans is when you look at, say, venture capital and investment in science or the investment in technology. Most investors, I just looking at the billionaire list of the world, the 2016 list of billionaires, and a good, probably a third of them have made their fortunes in energy. And everybody there, I'm sure, has their hand invested somewhere, even though it might be, say, like the Waltons or somebody, they're in retail. But behind the scenes, of course, they have their money invested in energy. So the big the big money people who tend to have a lot of influence in the direction that the world is going, the big money people have investments in standard energy technology. They don't want to see something innovative come along and wipe it out, just like they don't want to see a cure for cancer. But nuclear fuel is bad. I mean, say that we went through the industrial age and all we burned today was coal. Say we did not have coal scrubbers. Eventually, the earth would clean that up. I mean, we could kill ourselves off completely with coal pollution, and the earth would recover from that. We could do the same thing with oil or natural gas and basically kill off all life on earth as we know it. The earth would recover, and possibly even, there'd be some species that would recover, etc. But with nuclear, nothing's going to recover. We're not going to have life on earth at all. It's just going to die off.
Life that requires oxygen and natural processes. There may be robotic systems, and people completely isolated from the effects. I guess you could. Can you imagine living underground and creating oxygen out of water and filtering everything and having greenhouses and almost like a spaceship underground? I think unfortunately, this is going to be the way that the only people that are going to survive are going to be living.
Well, yeah, that's really not a way to live.
It's absurd. I'm just saying that all these facilities already exist, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you and I know that in the background, large-scale greenhouses are being developed for growing food, and then part of that is the growth medium and then water are going to be very selectively purified. And so water being a part of the process, we talk about non-GMO food or organic. Those are a couple buzzwords for today, and then people who are savvy know about that. But if you're putting polluted water, if you're putting toxic water in the mix, then why bother? Because that's where most of your pollution is going to come from, is by the plant absorbing the water and then the minerals or the pollution, and then you eat that. So that really great organic non-GMO spinach has been grown with completely toxic water, and it's just like the kelp or the shrimp in the ocean or whatever. It's accumulative. And every day that plant is taking on water, evaporating out the leaves, and it's polluting that plant. So you can eat all the organic non-GMO spinach you want, but if it's grown with polluted water, there's going to be a lot of toxin in that piece of spinach.
Well, luckily, most people don't know this, but 99% of the fresh water on the planet is underground. Only 1% of the fresh water is actually in lakes and rivers. But, again, this fracking nonsense going on in the U.S., I mean, it's doing a number on the underwater freshwater reserves of the U.S. right now, which is a real tragedy.
Yeah, fracking is, that's, part of the mining process or the extraction process for many, many different elements. Lithium is one of them, where they have to flush the ground with a liquid to get it out. It's a very expensive process. But fracking is, oh my goodness. The environmental damage done by fracking is over the top.
Yeah, and they're overproducing this gas. They have nowhere to sell it in the U.S. They become the biggest gas producer, but in the process, they're destroying their groundwater, which is, folks. I guess they want everyone to have to buy a water filter, or I don't know. I mean, you've got a good line of water filters, I understand, James, and maybe we should talk a bit about those. But I mean, there's a limit to what you can do with a water filter, is there not?
Well,
It's
yeah, I mean, you could,
the toxins. They're one of the reasons they're fracking. I've been told is that it's a good way to get rid of things like dioxins and very difficult chemical, things that are hard to break down. Like a dioxin is evidently very hard to break down. It's almost like a nuclear waste. You can't really do much with it. You can't burn it. You can't reduce it. You can't. The chemical bond is too strong to decompose it. So one of the reasons they frack is to get rid of these horrible toxins. They figure they're safer way down, under the ground. But they're going to groundwater.
That goes into, it goes into the groundwater. That's just, there again, I don't know what these scientists are smoking, but it's totally absurd to take and wholesale pump polluted, toxic water into the ground to force other highly toxic substance out of the ground. And in that movement, if you just let the original highly toxic substances there, not much would happen unless they are very close to the surface. But the majority is far enough underground that you would never even, you wouldn't even know it. But the pumping toxic water into the ground is a really bad idea.
Well, especially when it's your only backdrop, because we've pretty much polluted most of the groundwater on the surface, especially in a place like U.S., because you don't have to, have an industrial plant on a lake. It's with the geoengineering and the amount of nuclear radionuclide in the rain and whatnot. We've polluted all the fresh water on land. I would assume in Canada too. We don't have accurate measurements of these things. Unfortunately, they don't even make an effort to measure this stuff. They just keep raising the allowable limit of consumable water and food, and so they know it's getting worse.
Yeah, the EPA in the United States just shut down like 104 nuclear test stations, and what they are is simply automated test stations where it traps the air and then tests them for trace elements, nuclear trace elements, like from Fukushima. And so it may test for strontium or cobalt or something. But basically, they are excuse me, I had an interruption here, but
that's okay. So yeah, you're talking about the testing attempts to test for all the radionuclides. Do they even have?
But the EPA has shut down. The EPA has closed 104 nuclear testing sites around the United States.
But what do they test for, James? Like, how many of these radionuclides do they even test for? That's what.
Let's take Fukushima. Fukushima has probably over 100 abundant nuclear species that are being dumped into the ocean. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But they don't test for all 100, because you know that if you find one, then all the rest of it will be in proportion to what's being dumped into the ocean. So you only test for one or two of them. And it's trace testing. It's a common technique. You don't have to test for all of them because you know they're there.
Okay.
And so all you do is test for the quantity of one of them or two of them, and that gives you kind of a benchmark, and you know that all the other ones are there.
But people aren't told about all the other ones. They're only told that they tested for cesium or strontium, maybe barium. I mean, iodine. All these things that could be have radioactive isotopes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you only just test for one or two of them. And that's like in the Pyrenees Mountains, they have tests, etc. But the reason the EPA shut down these 104 test sites is because the readings were going off scale. And it's so bad they didn't want to say anything about it, so they just shut it down.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much the conclusion of the people that really know what's going on. And when it comes to and there's I guess there are people out there trying to get around the fact that the government isn't testing anymore, and I guess they're the nuclear emergency tracking NET, what is it, netc.com. Let me try to figure that one out here while we're chatting. They have their own network, but they used to use the network put out yeah, that's it, Nuclear Emergency Tracking Center. That's one good site to track what's going on. Many of their they said that evacuation level is often is a 300. I'm not sure of what that represents. Counts per second, I think, CPS. It's a lot of the cities are coming up at 1,000 all over the U.S. now, and it seems that every time I check that site, it gets worse and worse and worse. Okay,
are we
folks,
going on a break here?
We're coming up to a break on I'm Nature. We'll be back with James McCanney, and we'll try to get our buddy Warren Trammell in on the conversation in the next hour. Thanks for hanging in there, Warren.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Call me back in a few.
Guys.
Brian, call me back in a couple. Give me about.
Welcome back, one and all, to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and this is the time of my show when I stress the importance of supporting this amazing radio network. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com is the web address. We are completely uncensored, or for the most part uncensored. The only topic we're not allowed to discuss is the flat Earth resolution, which I have no issues with that one. It's kind of a funny issue to get into, but anyways, I guess a lot of people were talking about it, and it got some bad flack from our audience. So we don't talk about flat Earth, but anything else, folks, we can chat about on this network. No censorship whatsoever. It's one of the few places on the planet where we have such an open policy on discussion. We have 90 hosts ranging from everything from spirituality to science, ecology, such as my show, politics, economics, the Fed, world trends, and all sorts of different areas. So this is the network that needs your support. That is a very popular tool. We have a very strong audience, and thank God, because it keeps us going, folks. So I always suggest you look at the archives is the best way to support yourself and support your intellectual and ethical development, because it archives every day. All the shows are archived. You can download them at your leisure and enjoy them. So there's my pitch for the Great Revolution Radio, and I thank them every time for letting me have a show on such a great network with so many great other hosts. Now, let's get back to our two guests, Warren Trammell and James McCanney. Are you guys both here still?
I believe so.
Yes,
Warren?
Yes, I are here.
You are here. Okay. It's funny, Warren and I were chatting just before I connected with James, and he said he wanted to hang in and listen. But Warren is the ultimate political insider. I don't know anyone who's grown up so close to the reality of what politics is made of. Folks, politics is nothing but managed bribery. Do you agree with that statement, Warren?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's politics is 99% bribery.
Yeah, and we call it a democracy.
Well, the Republicans just came out and admitted that the Republicans just came out and admitted that the people do not elect the candidates. they were talking about what they could do to get rid of Trump at the political convention. Whether you're for or against it or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just that the Republicans, and so they said, well, then why do you even have a primary? And the guy goes, well, I don't even know, because people don't elect the candidate. The Republican Party does.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
but let's just that's another one of the falsehoods of democracy, is that it's actually your vote actually counts. But that's a very good point, James. But getting back to just James or to Warren, and we talked about the fact that you used to literally take suitcases of money from people and distribute them, right?
Absolutely. I remember one particular trip that my father and Governor Wallace flew out to Texas to see the famous Hunt brothers, particularly Bunker Hunt, who was at that time a billionaire, but he didn't want people to know that. But he was one of the nation's first billionaires. And he, on that particular trip, he gave my father a suitcase full of $100 bills. And that was back in the early 70s, when you almost didn't see a $100 bill. But he gave my father a suitcase full of $100 bills. It amounted to over $250,000, and to use in the Wallace for President campaign, just in cold cash money that never had to be reported. And
under the table contributions.
I'm sorry.
Under the table. How much money would you guys raise that way? Vern's dad used to be the right-hand man of Governor Wallace when he was in politics back in the 70s and 80s in Alabama. Okay.
We would raise hundreds of thousands of dollars that way. And remember, back in the late 60s, early 70s, that was a lot of money. Back in 1970, $250,000 was a lot of money. It would probably be like, $5 or $10 million today. So it was a big money game even back then. And Wallace had cash money coming in from everywhere, all over the United States, and he had people in Germany wanting to send him money, people in France and England wanting to send him money. So it was crazy. In Germany, the people in Germany thought he was going to be the next Hitler, and they offered to send him millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
It was a crazy time.
Yeah, no, well, but this is what we call politics, folks. It's just managed bribery. I mean, that's what it is. The guy who offers the most in funds to whoever wins, they try to play as many sides as they can. Usually in the U.S., it's pretty simple. It's a Democratic or Republican, but I mean, they're both really the same party. And the democracy is completely irrelevant. It's a complete snow job.
You know what democracy actually is. It's two wolves and a lamb voting on what's for supper. That's
a good analogy. But I mean, the fact that it just shows how corrupt it's getting. But the fact that the Republican Party brass are at least honest enough to say, hey, I mean, we don't care how many delegates Trump wins on his way to the convention. We can overturn any decision. We're really the ones running the party. And this nonsense about, it's a way to promote, I guess, the Republicans or whatever. It's not about democracy. It really is just a sideshow. And the fact that they've admitted this in the mainstream, I think is quite remarkable.
Yeah, but none of these people really run anything. They're there for lining their own pockets. And that's what keeps this whole machine running all the way up to the bankers who control it all, is that these people are greedy to the point of no return. They're so greedy and so committed to themselves and their buddies and their buddy system that they've just totally lost sight of any form of reality. I was on a show this morning and a guy called in. He goes, "Hey, I moved to New Jersey a long time ago, and I'm really well off. I live in one of the exclusive neighborhoods." And he goes, "I think things are going pretty good. I think things will be just fine." And I'm like, buddy, the guy was just completely, he goes, "Yeah, I was talking to my brother. We think things are pretty good." It's like, why don't you go up to Flint, Michigan for a while, or go to Detroit, or how about East LA, or maybe some of the Midwestern towns where there people are half the town is unemployed, where all the industries have left and people have no place to turn. There, that's the epitome of the type of politicians there are. It's borderline Hunger Games type of mentality, where you have the ultra rich, and then everybody else is just living down here on basically the peon level, and that's where it's headed towards. But and that's why they're so afraid of Trump, because he's going to destroy NAFTA, all the things they've done. They spent decades putting NAFTA and the TPP and the China trade pacts and all of these things in place. And here comes a guy that could destroy it all in an afternoon. And that's their gravy train.
I think if Trump somehow manages to survive, I'm sure there's many death threats already on him, many people planning to take him out. If he manages to survive and he actually wins the election, I can't imagine him living too long doing the things that he wants to do. I mean, the system is so corrupted, James.
Right, and they have so much.
I mean, he's JFK times 10. The kinds of stuff that he wants to do, and well, look what happened to poor JFK. He's going to have an army. He's going to have to hire his own private army to protect him. He's going to have to have a bus like the Pope has, but 10 times thicker. The walls. I mean, I just can't imagine that guy having any chance of living for too long. I mean, I hate to say this because I really want some positive changes in the U.S., but holy cow! I mean, it's just so corrupt. The system is just run by money, and the bigger briber gets their way. And there's so much money invested in the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. All these really dark industries. It's going to be hard to turn things around.
Oh yeah, no, there's so many factors, but literally, if it's not done, I mean, you may as well kiss this world goodbye. I mean, that's how bad it is. People are going to start throwing nuclear weapons around. There's so many problems that have to be solved. That it cannot go on in the same direction.
We're running out of time, and I really applaud the people that are supporting Trump. I don't agree with all the cynics that this guy's no different. No, I think he is different. I think Putin's different. I think, like you say, the conscience is kicking in some of these people who really were just in it for the money and the power. But I think finally the message is getting through to them from the alternative media and whatnot. You have a show, I have a show. A lot of people are doing shows now. They're getting the message that things are out of control.
Yeah. Well, people think, oh, Trump's just doing this for the money. I heard an estimate he's lost $500 million in business because you got to understand the business people are Republicans. And so the business people don't want to do business with him because, what he's doing. It's their gravy train is this the way the system runs. And they're locked into it, and they don't have any way to get a real job. I mean, these people depend on this, their lifestyles. They got their nice house, they got their millions coming in, and they spend it. They're big spenders on themselves. So a lot of people's rich livelihoods depend on this system to keep running the way it's running, and they can't go out and get a real job.
Just think of the number of accountants and lawyers and the people who work for these trade commissions, the UN. There's so many systems that are sort of piggybacking each other that if things change dramatically, that a lot of these people are going to be put out of work, and they don't like that. the WTO. I mean, what Trump's saying, he wants to basically bring the jobs back home, completely kibosh a lot of these trade agreements. No, and I know I think it's great what he's saying. A lot of what he's saying makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no doubt about it, and it's whether I like it or you like it or whatever. The reality is that vast numbers of people are coming out and responding, and I have a note to talk about this tomorrow night on my show. Is that if he runs, there's no question in my mind that the Republicans are going to bring up their own candidate. So he's going to have to run and literally beat all of them put together. He's going to have to beat Hillary. She'll probably be the Democratic candidate. They're going to have to. He's going to have to beat Hillary, the Republicans, corrupt voting machines. He's going to have to beat all of that to win. Plus the Electoral College, which is the same situation as delegates. That's who really elects the president of the United States, not the vote. So, I mean, it would have to be such an overpowering vote that in beating all of those, but you have to understand if the Republicans split, they're going to actually make it worse. They're going to actually increase Trump's chances of winning. I don't know if you understand. That sounds like a contradiction, but it's really true.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me like they're going to try. They're throwing everything at him. I mean, they're going to, all the candidates are ganging up against him. All the other candidates are going to put all their votes behind the other. Maybe it's going to be what's his name? The Canadian. Can't believe I can't remember his name.
Oh, Cruz.
Cruz.
The Canadian. He shouldn't even be running.
Cruz has got perhaps the guy who's furthest ahead right now. But anyway, Warren's throwing something out here about Paul Ryan being the Republican candidate. Yeah, and the Electoral College and voting machines are rigged. So there's so many ways that can beat Trump. I mean, I got it, and I agree with you. I mean, things have to change. They haven't even talked about environmental issues in the campaign, and they're the most pressing issues. It hasn't even been a discussion topic. Have you heard anybody talk about nuclear power, Fukushima, fracking?
No.
I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, they're so disconnected from what their priorities should be. People think we can eat money, eat gold. It's going to keep us going. Those poor whales are eating engine parts. That's what people are going to start eating soon if we don't smarten up.
Well, yeah, it's really true. There's food prices are going to go up. This summer the United States is going to have a lot of problems. They're already talking about having ISIS attacks. And that's all orchestrated, So, and that's just throwing chaos into the mix.
We are ISIS.
Well, yeah.
The U.S. government is ISIS.
Yeah.
And the Israelis. Yeah.
But that's where it's headed. So this summer is going to be a roller coaster. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
They're going to throw everything they can to disrupt everything possible. And it's going to be a mess. It's because those people are not going to go down without a lot of kicking and screaming. If you think a little kid throws a tantrum, wait till all these neocons start, they could be arresting Cheney and Bush and the boys, throwing them in prison. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that could happen. So, these people's not only livelihood, but their actually existence, their, everything that they've conned their way into having could be on the chopping block here. And it'd be the domino principle. Once it starts, it's, and by the way, this has happened before. This is not a new thing. And I won't even mention other countries where this has happened. But the people have finally had enough, and here's a chance to rectify it. And I saw an interview with Wolf Blitzer. He's the War Channel. We call Fox News the War Channel, Wolf Blitzer is their top situation room analyst, news reporter, and he was interviewing Donald Trump. And he was criticizing Trump for saying there would be riots if they tried to block him. And Trump said, yeah, these people are pissed off. These people are really mad. And he said, if they try and mess with Trump's ability to get elected, he said there would be riots. And that's just being realistic. It's not like he's trying to create it. And Wolf Blitzer is saying, well, you could prevent it. He goes, I can't prevent people from being mad. And that's really true. But you see the con there? The Soros and the Clintons are causing all this problem. They're literally hiring people to create problems. And then they blame it on Trump and they go, well, you're causing all these problems, you could prevent it. But it's not the Trump people that are causing the problem. It's the hired actors. It's the crisis actors. It's the people they pay $100 a day to go out there and create chaos. And then they're trying to put the blame on Trump and say, hey, you could prevent this by talking to your people. Well, it's not Trump's people that are doing it, but man, the news media is just sliding around this. They're doing everything they can to twist the news, twist what's going on. And they're experts at this. They're experts at conning the American public. I mean, after all, they pulled off 9/11, conned the public on that. This is the next crisis in their life is Trump running for president. So they're gonna do all the corrupt political analysis they can, all the lies. I mean, all the stops are coming out because the Republicans have said they would rather see Hillary win than Trump, and that just shows that they're all on the same team.
Exactly.
They're all on the same team. So it doesn't matter. It's just I used to use this example from the science world. If a big military contract goes out for, say, aerospace, and it's between Boeing and Lockheed, well, who gets the contract? Well, who pays off more, who's bribed more, and say Boeing gets the contract. Well, Lockheed knows it's going to get a big chunk of that business. It's just that the executives from Boeing are going to smoke bigger cigars, have more champagne and more girls, with all the money that's being thrown around. And so, I mean, that's the level of corruption that's going on. But Lockheed is going to get its piece of the pie too. But then Lockheed knows that when the next round of contracts comes around, the military will go, oh, Lockheed, we think you're going to do good this time. So they give the contract to Lockheed, and all that money just flowing around, millions of dollars under the table. Oh yeah, it's party time in Washington. But that's the problem. The party time is going to end, and they're all seeing this coming to an end. And so there's literally millions and millions and millions of people whose fat lifestyle depends on this government just slush fund coming out, party fund.
Yeah.
And that's going to stop.
Well, I think we've lost our supremacy in so many areas too in North America. John McAfee, the guy, the creator of the antivirus programs and whatnot, he's trying to become the leader of the Libertarian Party in the presidential race, and he's saying that we're 20 years behind the Russians and the Chinese now in our computer technology.
Yeah. Well, look at, say, for example, common things like airports or infrastructure or roads or bridges or all of that stuff. And, that's what Trump is saying. He's saying this country is in tatters. Look at the cities. You ever drive through New York City? It's like a roller coaster ride. You're dippity-doo and it's ridiculous. These cities are falling apart at the seams. That's the good part of the city.
Yeah, well, it just, we used to basically rule through military force, but I think that era is coming to an end.
Oh, that's all over. That is all over. Yeah, that's
That's
not
the
going
most
to happen
crucial thing,
anymore.
James. I mean, we can money only goes so far. If you don't have the military might to back it up, money you can only buy off so many politicians. If the military and another your adversary has better military technology, like the Russians seem to be the top dogs right now. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. The United States didn't even show up at the Paris Air Show this year, and over the last couple of years, because there's just the Russian equipment is so outmanned. I mean, the U.S. had a couple helicopters there, this that had new dashboards. I mean, it's like it's pathetic. They didn't even show up because they're so out technologically. They're so outgunned by what's coming out of other countries, and Russia doesn't. Russia is not putting its real equipment, nor is China putting it out at the Paris Air Show. That's just the stuff they would sell to other second and third world countries that want to spend their oil money on military stuff. But the real stuff the Russians have, the story is that none of the cruise missiles that the U.S. shot into Syria got to where they were going.
So they have their anti missile technology, or was it their communication jamming technology that
Well,
did them?
it's hard to say. It's more jamming or control. The word is that they can lock in and control those. They've hacked into the systems. A lot of the U.S. systems have been hacked into. So they literally can pick them up and control them.
Yeah, because these cruise missiles are controlled by satellite telemetry, right? Not, they have onboard computers, but I think they need a satellite connection to
Well,
be accurate.
no, once they let them go, they typically run on geological formations, and they track using that. And then when they get to where they're going, they have a picture of the site, and then they lock in on that. So it's more visual. But they still need, a lot of high level technology to make them operate.
So, but what I've been told is that, or heard from on other shows, is that they've got some way of either jamming their ability to see the terrain through some sort of it's almost like a radio jamming system.
Yeah.
There's like when in Ottawa where I used to live, you go to certain parts of anywhere close to government installations, nothing works right. Your cell phones die and everything. They have jamming technology, but they've got some sort of ultra sophisticated jamming technology that can jam any sort of signal, and then they can fry circuit boards with this stuff. And they found this is actually, if this is for real, this is really going to actually, if everyone gets this technology, it would be great because they could basically disable any weapon system, because now everything is basically computerized, right? So if they could fry circuit boards, wow, that would be an incredible advancement for the
Well, yeah,
planet,
and
for
yeah,
peace.
you have not heard anything about United States and Syria lately. They were going to go in, they were going to do all this stuff, and nothing happened. They didn't do anything. They bombed some rocks out in the middle of the desert, but they really didn't do anything. The United States didn't do anything.
Yeah, I was reading an article too, like Saudi Arabia, who is a very, very strong ally of the U.S. or used to be, is talking about buying weapons from the Russians.
Hmm.
Now that's that's pretty. That must have the U.S. freaking. And here they are bending over backwards to be friends with Cuba, their arch enemy for what, the last 50, 60 years. They're obviously
That,
desperate to create
yeah,
new business opportunities for the country.
yeah, that is really, really strange. And that was a new development. But I don't know if you know this. When Obama showed up, nobody greeted him.
Yeah, yeah.
This is not the first time that has happened. When he went to, oh, I won't even say all the states that he's gone to, and nobody, in fact, the people told him, don't even come here. And in some places he went to, and nobody was there to greet him. So But at Cuba, yeah, nobody showed up to say hello. The prez goes there. They had a big rollout of his super protective limousine there. It's bomb-proof, and it's got a pint of his blood there in case he needs to have a transfusion or whatever. I don't know. It was just beyond ridiculous, bulletproof. And when he went to Argentina, they made such a big deal out of that. But, you know, in Cuba, they didn't even show up to say hello. So and why would a president go there if he didn't have a diplomatic meeting set up to meet people and talk and have an agenda and a schedule? That's just weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, they're getting desperate. They're losing out to the Chinese and the Russians, and I think they're basically this BRICS economic alliance. I think that the Brazilian issue was a bit of an attack on the BRICS, but I think that they're going to survive all the nefarious manipulation of the U.S. Military, and they're going to. I can't see much. I don't have much optimism for the U.S. In its future. I think the U.S. has a strong possibility of descending into like a Beijing across the board. There's just so little understanding of their environmental degradation there. Canada, I hate to say it, but if we don't smarten up, we're going to end up in the same boat. The only thing we've got different here is a lot fewer people disrupting the environment, but we have all the same problems. There's just a tenth of the people creating the pollution. But we got the nukes here. We got
large corporations. You have large corporations like in the tar fields out in Saskatchewan, Alberta. You have large corporations destroying a tremendous amount of property out there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if we had 10 times the population in Canada, we'd be doing the same thing here. We'd be devastating everything. So we've got maybe 10 extra years to smarten up. But but I mean, the U.S. is just, wow. I mean, it's almost to me like a wasteland now. I hate to sound so pessimistic. Maybe I'm just in a bad mood tonight, but there's so many challenges there. They're fracking, they're geoengineering, they've got all the nuke plants they have to decommission if they ever even get around to that, which I'm not even sure they will. It's just an environmental disaster zone. The highest rates of everything, in cancer, every disease, you name it. It's just off the charts.
Yeah, and the water pollution, the 106 cities now reporting severe water pollution. I mean,
yeah, and they don't they don't seem to have any money to fix these things.
Our cities.
You're breaking up there, James.
At all.
Yeah,
quite a few cities. So.
Yeah, say that again, James, because that last statement about all the city infrastructure I think you're talking about it didn't come through.
Am I losing my signal?
Yeah, you're coming in wobbly. Your bandwidth's dropping off for some reason. I'm not sure what.
Okay, let me see if I can adjust that here.
Oh,
is that any better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. No, the infrastructure, especially in regard to water in the cities, is just really, a very bad condition. The septic systems in cities, very bad condition. What's coming out of the septic system, extremely polluted with toxic chemicals. And the United States is in a really a big mess. And I'm surprised too that the candidates aren't talking about the environment, because that is issue number one. There's no question about it.
I mean, if they took all the money they're putting into the military and they converted it to environmental projects, they might survive. But I just can't see a dramatic change like that happening. The military have so much power that they're going to want to milk the system forever.
Even Trump is saying he wants a strong military. He wants to pour money back into the military, and it's really a black hole. It doesn't produce anything.
No.
You know, it actually used to be that the military did things when they weren't busy training. They would actually be off doing projects. But that doesn't happen now. It's just a complete, you just put the money there, it doesn't produce anything, and really it doesn't defend the country. So it's basically a black hole where you put your money and it doesn't come back.
Yeah, they can't even make an advanced jet now. That whole project, the F, was it the F-35? A complete dud. How much did they invest in that? 400 million or trillion or billion? 400 billion?
Well, who even knows? Who even knows? Yeah,
I mean, that just shows how they basically become like Chrysler back in the 70s when all the guys did there is hire cute secretaries, and who knows what they were doing in the office instead of running the business. And the whole U.S., it's just become a decadent, almost like a Sodom and Gomorrah story. These people are just, they you know, that movie, the Wolf of Wall Street. I think a lot of that's going on in all these military offices. I mean, it's become decadent, out of control, and completely disorganized. I think
and that's when anybody comes along and says, "Hey, we can't do this anymore." They all jump up, down, and scream because, hey, their ungodly, wealthy lifestyle is being threatened. I mean, just think of it. Where would these millions, literally millions and millions, tens of millions of people, where would they go and get a real job that pays that kind of money? I mean, all of the money under the table and the kickbacks and the contracts, and I mean, where are they going to get a real job that pays that kind of money?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, and the money god rules in the military-industrial complex, and that's that's what's basically pushed it so far along and in such a dangerous direction for the planet. But I mean, yeah, everybody seems to love the money god. So 99.9% of people, anyways. There are a few sane people left, but wow, we're really up against it. But hey, James, we should get in a few plugs for what you're up to. In terms of your radio show, and you've got some awesome water filters. We should talk about those two subjects because we're going to run out of time here. And I wanted to make sure you got some, people. I really strongly recommend that you listen to James' radio show. He's on, you're on tomorrow night. What time are you on, and where are you, James?
6 p.m. Central Time, WWCR, Nashville, Tennessee. It streams live on the internet, wwcr.com, Tower 2. There's 4 towers at WWCR. And I'm on Tower 2 at 6 p.m. Central Time.
That's 7 Eastern.
That's 7 Eastern Time, United States time.
Yeah.
Now that's different.
Well, 90% of our listeners are U.S. citizens.
Okay.
From what I've told. So yeah, that's your biggest audience. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, and the re-airs on Friday night. It's on some satellites. It re-airs. It's on, but anyway, there's all the ways to listen are listed on my webpage. So I encourage people just to go there, scroll down a little bit in the center column. There's a link that says how to listen. And also there's a link to a subpage where all the archives are located. So you can listen to all my past shows for the past 15 years on the archive subpage. So it's jmccsci.com. That's 7 letters. That's the webpage. JM is in Mary, CC, S is in Sam, C is in Charlie, I is in Indigo.com. And just check it out. There's about 6.5 gigabytes of material on that webpage, all the subpages. So I tell people, get a big cup of coffee and plan to spend some time there. But a lot of material. This week I'll be talking about the comets that came by. March 21st and 22nd, there were 2 comets.
I mean, yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about your incredible knowledge of astronomy and astrophysics and a different theory of the whole energy system of the universe. That's a fascinating topic.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I developed many decades ago. And I saw a lot of contradictions in standard astrophysics, astronomy theory, and I resolved them. And one contradiction. Let me just give a simple example of the contradictions that come out of standard astronomy and astrophysics. Our sun, of course, provides us with energy every day. And the standard theory is that the core of the sun produces fusion, and that energy migrates out to the surface of the sun and comes out in the form of light and keeps it at a 6,000 degree temperature, etc. But here's the problem. If you took the mass of the sun and even extrapolated it back, in time, and the way this converts energy into, it converts matter into energy using the famous E equals mc squared equation. It's very simple calculation. You determine the amount of matter in the sun and how long could it burn at the rate of energy production that the sun has, which we know it's very easy to calculate. What's called the solar constant, the amount of energy that we measure here at Earth. And what you can find out is that there's not enough matter in the sun for it to burn for 4.5 billion years, the estimated age of our solar system and sun. In fact, there's not enough matter there to burn for 1 billion years. So the whole basic model of the solar system is totally incorrect, couldn't possibly be true. That's an example of hundreds of contradictions that are in the astronomy astrophysics world. So at any rate, what I did is I started rebuilding this based on my theoretical work. Actually, the nuclear fusion of the sun is up at the surface of the sun and is constantly replenished because the hydrogen is coming in all the time into the sun from outside. And it's basically an electrical fire. This is a long, complicated story, so I'm not going to go through it now.
Sure.
But the fact is that the sun builds up an electric field around it. And it does this by sending out an excess current of protons in what we call the solar wind. So it builds up a capacitor. And the comets and the Earth and Jupiter, all the planets, are literally discharging this solar capacitor. But the comets, these two little comets that came by Earth, only a couple million miles away, their physical size is about 1 kilometer across, so pretty small chunk of rock. Their electrical size is probably 200,000 miles across. Their electrical size, and so they have greatly affected Earth. I'll be talking a lot about them. I talked about them on my show last week, and I'll be talking some more. Remember that big snowstorm that came through last week? Through from Denver all the way up to Toronto, where you guys are. That big snowstorm was a result of those comets, electrical activity creating weather, and I actually predicted that the week before the comets came. I said we're going to see severe weather. Said we're going to see air glow. I have a picture at the top of my homepage showing the air glow.
So what these geoengineering nut bars did is they took your physics and they use it now in geoengineering.
Partly, yeah. One of the techniques for geoengineering is something actually I developed with Russian scientists back in the mid-90s. I was working with some Russian scientists at the Central University in Novosibirsk in Russia, Dr. Alex Dmitry and his atmospheric scientists there. And what we developed was a method for steering hurricanes away from shore. It was using lasers. Now they're using those. That was the technique they used to drive Hurricane Katrina into New Orleans and many other hurricanes that were manipulated. This goes way back. And we designed that system to cause the hurricanes to dump the water offshore and to maneuver them away from landfall to stop the damaging effects of hurricanes.
It's been very successful because they've had almost no hurricanes in Florida since Katrina, right? This is the last big one.
Well, and that didn't even hit Florida. It went around the southern tip.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, in that part of the world where they used to have, what, 7 or 8 a year, I mean, they're completely gone now.
Uh-huh. Well, that's because a lot of those military guys have their homes down in Florida. They don't want to run a hurricane in there and run it over their own house.
Well, think of all the money the insurance companies were saving. They used to hand out billions upon billions in damages. Now that people are still paying that insurance, and they're saving all that money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's one thing that we rarely talk about too, is the power of the insurance companies. They're the guys who created the derivative market. They're really powerful too. I mean, they really are pretty much up there. I think they're up there with the bankers in terms of the amount of power they have and the amount of money these guys are making. Honest to God, the things like life insurance, car insurance, home insurance. Oh,
Well, if you look at the biggest businesses, go through any city, any major American city, the biggest building is the government center. The state, or if it's a city that doesn't have state offices, the local government building, municipality, is the biggest building in town. That's the biggest business because everybody is paying you. Okay, the second biggest business are the insurance buildings, the buildings owned by the insurance companies. So the Aetnas, whatever buildings in these cities are the insurance owned buildings. So yeah, they got lots of money.
They're big time into control of everything. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much people don't realize how much they affect our lives, the way they do risk management, and it's just getting talk about police state. I mean, is everything for every reason why you can't do anything now? It's because of insurance. Or you can't do this because insurance. I can't walk in and look at my kids do tramp anymore because of insurance. Or you're not allowed to go in the facility anymore. You have to stand behind a wall or a mirror or a window. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's all because of insurance.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And it's just, it's everywhere. Oh, they can only make the jump so high in the freestyle parks now because of insurance. I mean, and that's just one little example. They control everything. All the laws, what they're making, the laws relating to cars. I bet you insurance is big time into these cars are going to drive themselves because it's going to save them a lot of money in accidents. La, 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 la. So, yeah. Yeah, it's something we rarely talk about. The insurance business is nasty, and it's well protected. And they are the ones that develop the derivative. And the derivatives are the vehicle that is going to bring down the financial system at some point. I'm not sure when they're going to trigger them, but man, I mean, that's just going to be the only ones who are going to buy their way out of that system are the Rothschilds, the people with the trillions of dollars in assets. They're the ones that they're going to own everything then.
Well, no, it's just a way to break the public and bring them into serfdom. It's just piling these various forms of debt on the public that they cannot possibly get out of, and there's no way out.
Yeah.
So insurance and legal, and there again, the government is involved with insurance, requiring you to have it. You got to pay it. I had a kick out of Billy Clinton when he was going to become president there. He goes, I'm going to get into the insurance companies. We're going to open up their books and we're going to find out what's going on. He didn't do anything. He had a party instead of fulfilling his campaign promise. The only thing he did is blow up Kosovo. He did do that, and they killed all the people at Waco. So yeah, Bill did a few things there. Stole from Social Security. Those are the kind of things that Bill did as president.
Spike Lee was on a Canadian news show recently, and he said how much all those white guys stopped Obama from doing good things, and I'm just sitting there laughing my ass off, saying, "Oh, give me a break, Spike. Get a life, get a grip on the world." The guy started more wars than any president in the history of the United States. Put out more of those what do they call those presidential decrees? Than any president ever. I mean, the guy was, and they just keep getting worse and worse. as the world becomes more and more corrupted, and the politics just gets more and more blatantly corrupted. I mean, I don't know. I think almost everyone in the U.S. now realizes how corrupt the system is. It's just a matter of whether or not they believe you can salvage anything. That's the issue. But I think most people see the corruption. It's just everywhere, and the poverty and the decadence and the environmental issues. So, like I say, I don't want to sound too dark tonight, but man, I mean, we have to step it up, folks. We really have to get involved and become activists, and that's what my show is usually about. But tonight, it's more of an issue of talking about. But hey, before we run out of time, James, I want to get your a chance to talk about your water filters.
Well, I have a line of water filters. I've been selling these for about 15 years. They're called JMCC water filters, and they're the best on the planet. And that's not just blowing smoke. They really are. Here's the thing with water filters. We have so much toxic waste in the water today. My filters are designed to remove really the majority of the toxins that are in the water, and they do it all in one filter element. There's really nothing else like this, and you think, well, you're just saying that, or how do you prove this? Well, my water filters are the only ones on the market that hold a national independent laboratory certification. And it's a test that proves that what the specification sheet says is true, that they really do what the claims state. And now I don't really consider I have any competition, because nobody else has taken the time, the money, the effort, whatever, to get their water filters certified.
So at any rate, have to pay a lot of money to get this done. I mean, it obviously takes a lot of time to check for all the different toxins that your filters take out, right? To test for all these things.
Yeah, and this is an ongoing process. This isn't just like they tested it once, it looks good, because the manufacturing process has to keep up with the standards. And so literally,
so you have to retest every year? Pay to have it tested?
It's constant, yeah, in the manufacturing process and everything. Because you could put all your time and make one filter that really works good, give it to the lab, and then have them test it, and they go, it works. Well, that doesn't mean all the rest of your filters are going to do that. This is an ongoing process that has to be continually maintained. So you have to maintain quality control, the materials, etc. And then the containers are stainless steel and a high density polyethylene, which is a food grade, FDA approved food plastic. And then I've got the above sink model, that little hose screws into the faucet on your kitchen sink or bathroom sink. And then there's an under-counter one. We even have a water filter for horses. Horses are very susceptible to toxics, much more than people. Horse owners are very, very critical about giving their horses clean water, which is funny because they're more critical about that than they are drinking clean water themselves. And so anyway, the product line is there. It's all described in the sales page.
So it's JMCC Water Filters. Is that your Facebook page?
No. What you go to is my same homepage, jmccsci.com. Just scroll down and there's the link to the sales page, and that's where all of the water filters are described. So there's one web page to go to, jmcc, S as in Sam, C as in Charlie, I as in indigo.com, 7 letters, jmccsci.com.
But you don't have a Facebook page anymore?
But I don't really use it because it's too many letters. People can end up someplace else.
Well, I'll be posting all this on my site. All your links on my Facebook page.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll get you a little bit of business. And because I completely agree with you that we're 70% water, It's a main source of cleansing our body, getting rid of all the constant waste products that are coming out of. We're constantly reproducing cells. There's a lot of there's a lot of toxins that got to come out of us in the best of times, let alone in a time when there's toxins everywhere around us. So the key, I think, the most important element in a good health is good water.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you're going to flush your body out or clean your system out, water is, I mean, that's the ticket. That's what you're made of.